Hi YouTube, it's Perry. So Twitch recently introduced something called channel points. You can accumulate channel points on anyone's stream by watching it, by being subscribed, by clicking on a little button in chat. Channel points don't really do anything, but they allow for some, interesting interactions with chat. So I've done something where I allow users to spend 100,000 channel points to choose my build. So this is the first choose my build submission that came in. The only stipulation here was play a totem character. So we put it to a vote in chat, and the stream decided I'm playing a Ice Spear champion. I started playing a totem version of Ice Spear at level 38 on my champion, and it was some of the worst leveling of my life. So apparently Pierce is super important for Ice Spear. This is not really something that I knew going into it. Only later on did I realize that this build is part of a build guide, which recommends not playing this build until level 50 or so. And I understand why. It feels significantly better at level 50 than it does at level 38, so we kind of struggled through it. There's some anti-synergy in this build. So the totems taunt, they inherit the 100% chance to taunt on hit from the champion ascendancy. So the enemies walk up to the totems. So if the enemies are too close to the totem, then the Ice Spear can't get to its second form, so it deals drastically reduced damage. On top of that, if you don't have Pierce, you actually can't clear any packs at all. So that's how I learned my lesson. You can build around the second form struggle with the Helm enchant. It says Ice Spear travels 30% reduced distance before changing forms. And you can build projectile speed and you get quality on your gem as well. It kind of helps to mitigate what's going on here. Okay, let's talk about the build guide itself. This build claims to be a lazy build guide, Ice Spear Totem Champion, with the specific purpose of getting to depth 1000 plus in Delve. I'll put a link to the build guide on the forums in the description of this video here. I don't think it's something that I would point someone toward, but I kind of like some of the ideas. There's some other ideas that I don't like in the build guide as much. Basically, if you're trying to delve as deep as possible, I think there might be a better tool, maybe a better build out there instead of this. But maybe you can find some ideas in that build guide that you want to borrow. I do think the totem taunt thing is pretty neat, and I might even explore that in the future at some point. The taunt build around and the choice of being a champion, it's pretty interesting, and I think it's something that's still worth building around, even right now in PoE. I definitely understand where the build creator was going with the concept. The blood magic, and even continuing to use Tugahama's Fortress, the unique shield, it's probably worth preserving this. So you can craft shields with +1 cold spell skill gems and +1 totems and life and damage. You can craft these things. But for the cost, the shield is a pretty good option. Blood magic does help mitigate the high mana cost of the Ice Spear totem, which is pretty good. So I was happy to keep this in the build. Although Tugahama's Fortress is a defensible choice, I decided to get rid of the other blood magic unique item, Malachi's Awakening. Malachi's Awakening has seen some play in Fire Trap builds. Fire Trap has super high scaling with flat added damage. It's a cool item, it has a ton of damage, but a lot of the issues that I was trying to fix had to do with Helm enchants from Uberlab, and I couldn't find any of these in the softcore economy. I ended up crafting my own with pristine and frigid fossils, trying to get nearby enemies have -9 cold resistance and a bunch of life, and we did okay, so we used rare helmets instead. Soul Mantle is still a great choice for a build like this, and it still works great with the Self-Flagellation Jewel to give yourself tons of increased damage to the build. The other part of this build is Kikazaru, but I think we can do better than that. So there are some Shaper and Crusader rings that allow us to get 35% reduced effective curses on us, which caps out at 90% reduced effect, along with the help of the Sanctum of Thought node on the skill tree. Using these rings to fill out life, resistances, chaos res, whatever. These rings are a great alternative to using Kikazaru, and it was fun to shop around and do some of my own crafting. At its core, the build is a tanky, fortified champion. It uses taunt, it uses totems to stay safe. The damage is kind of secondary, and it comes from Ice Spear, crit multi, and consistency. There's a lot of stuff that could be done with other defensive options, like using Divine Flesh, or using Scion Pathfinder Champion, making use of the Fortified During Flask effect from Hardened Scars, along with an Enduring Hybrid Flask. That could be neat. The Champion Ascendancy felt pretty okay overall, maybe a bit too defensive. If I did this build again, I would definitely explore a Scion Pathfinder X Ascendancy. Maybe I would keep the Champion Sub-Ascendancy for the taunt if I wanted to preserve that layer of defense. Offensively, the damage was okay, but the damage delivery pattern wasn't really for me. So straight lines, narrow damage, the whole stage 2 piece of the Ice Spear, There's better ways to get good damage and to get good coverage without having to build around these things. Okay, so why am I playing Ball Lightning then? I didn't really like Ice Spear at all. The speed of the build was too slow, even for my taste. The anti-synergy of Taunt and Form 2 of the Ice Spear was frustrating to me, and the lazy playstyle of the build, coupled with the already lazy playstyle of Totems, it was too much for me. As soon as we started joking about potentially buying boots with less movement speed in order to stop myself from running ahead of my Totems, I knew I needed to swap to something else. Ball Lightning didn't have very good single target on my final build, and the fight against Cirrus at Awakener level 8 was pretty pitiful. Nevertheless, the map clear felt significantly better. There is definitely a build out there with Ball Lightning Totems. I couldn't find anyone on Softcore Trade League who was using Ball Lightning Totems except for people who were using it to augment their single target on a otherwise self-cast Ball Lightning build. Alright, let me give you a quick rundown of the build. We're going to pop open POB here. We'll take a look at the skill tree, the ascendancy, skill gems, items, and maybe some of the configurations too. So for the skill tree, this comes straight from the build guide that's linked in the description of this video here. I opted to take the strength nodes here because I didn't really need the rest of this life here, and I'd rather just grab this life. So we have life, 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 life. We have some damage here, some life, some life. We have Sanctum of Thought, which is a crucial part of this build because it gives reduced effective curses on us. Life, life, Ancestral Bond, and 1 crit multi-cluster. So that's what we're looking at right now. It's a bit defensive, right? Some notable things to point out about the skill tree here. We only have a little bit of totem placement speed. You might think that we could anoint more. Maybe we can anoint something like Shamanistic Fury for more totem placement speed. I opted for Shaman's Dominion because it gives lots of crit multi and tons of damage for us. I figured this would be better. I didn't try out Shamanistic Fury, but only 15% increase is probably not quite enough, and certainly not enough to compare with going with the Hierophant Ascendancy instead, and how much totem placement speed you get just by having that Ascendancy. In any case, that's the skill tree. Let's take a look at the skill gems themselves. So we have Ball Lightning, multiple totems, added lightning, slower prod, faster casting, control destruction. Of note, the way Ball Lightning works, it does scale with increased area of effect, but it doesn't scale with area damage at all. So we don't want like Conk Effect, for example. Beyond that, we have casting damage taken, Steel Skin for a little extra defense. We have Conductivity in here with power charges. And then we are using Wrath as our one free 50% aura because we're using blood magic. And then Flame Dash. This Arcane Surge does not actually do anything because we're not using mana. One cute thing to talk about here is using Wave of Conviction Trap. So Wave of Conviction only applies exposure for the highest damage dealt, and you need to deal damage for Wave of Conviction to actually apply exposure. But if we have Ancestral Bond, we can't deal damage ourselves. So to get around this, we were using Wave of Conviction plus Trap, Cluster Trap, and Charge Traps as a 4-link in our boots. If we use Trap along with Wave of Conviction, it's the Trap dealing the damage, it's not us, which means that we can still apply exposure, which is great. The reason to use Charge Traps here is that we have a consistent source of Frenzy Charges, both while clearing and for a single target, because we have a chance to gain those Frenzy Charges when the trap is triggered by an enemy. For Power Charges as well, we can always do something like Power Charge on crit with Stormbrand, because critting does not mean that we have to deal damage, so it still works just fine while we have Ancestral Bond on the skill tree. So here's the gear that we ended up using on the character. The one notable exception here is that we're not using Pandemonious. It would be a damage increase over what we have here, but I didn't want to spend the 5 exalts on it, and I wanted to see if we can do something neat with crafting for ourselves. So we ended up making a +1 all int skill gems with a tier 3 multi-roll, only 27 crit multi on this, little life, and then we have Shaman's Dominion on it. It's pretty strong. The reason we didn't use Pandemonious, well, we're actually using Ball Lightning, so it doesn't quite do anything, but it's still a pretty neat amulet. For the helmet, you've seen this already. We have Ball Lightning damage. Nearby enemies have -9 to lightning resistance. We could do something with Ball Lightning fires an additional projectile, but Ball Lightning can't shotgun based on having multiple Ball Lightning projectiles going out if they're from the same cast. So if you have something like Spell Echo, those are 2 separate casts of Ball Lightning, and those can both deal damage to one enemy at the same time. But I wanted some more damage, so we went with this helmet chat instead. For the weapon, we were looking for Takati. Takati is spell damage with the non-chaos extra chaos. This is one of the drop-only mods that happens from temple modifiers. So we have Takati, tier 3 lightning damage to spells, lightning gain is extra chaos, and then 23 crit multi. 21 crit multi. It's pretty good. It's got 4 good damage mods on it. It could be better, but it's a strong choice here. I have some gloves that we've crafted, some hunter gloves with chance to unnerve enemies on hit for 4 seconds. And then we just slapped a little bit of extra life on them and some fire resistance. For the belt, we have lightning damage, life, and lightning res. We just used pristine fossils and metallic fossils to try to craft our own belt. And we didn't need too much resistance, so this was a passable belt for us here. For the boots, this is just life, resistance, strength, 30 movement speed. It's everything that we needed. You've seen the chest piece already. It's just a soul mantle. For the rings, these are 2 rings that we use to replace Kikizaru and set ourselves at 88 or 89% reduced effective curses on us. So we have 35% reduced effective curses on this ring, and then we also have 33% reduced effective curses on this ring. Then we also have some life, some minimum frenzy charges, some extra resistances on both of these rings. It's pretty nice overall. And last piece is Tukahama's Fortress. This is, all in all, it's a pretty defensible shield, especially if you're using something like Val Molten Shell, if you're benefiting from all the armor that you're getting per summon totem. Last but not least, the jewels. We have spell damage, life, resistance, nothing too special on this, but we were using it to fill in some resistances earlier on. We have self-flagellation with a nice damage roll on it. So it's pretty important to try to get like 19 or 20% increased damage per curse on you. 10% increased damage per curse on you is just like not worth using. And then last but not least, we have corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. Every time that I make one of these characters, I need to roll something that has corrupted blood on it so that I don't get wrecked during the Awakener fight. So that's the result of the first ever Choose My Build submission from the channel points thing on Twitch. Honestly, it was pretty fun. I enjoyed playing something that I wouldn't normally play and having all the discussions in chat about the things we could do differently or maybe the things we liked and don't like about the build. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I have another build round coming up soon for Tornado Shot Mines, and spoiler, that build turned out way better than I expected it to. So we'll have another video about that coming up soon. If you have a build that you want to see played, stop by the stream sometime. We'll talk about it, twitch.tv/PerryThePig. I'm happy to talk about this build, my current project, or whatever it is that you're currently working on in PoE. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.